Hello and welcome back to After This, episode 4, part 2, because we realised that we had a lot more to talk about than we thought we did. This is Daniel.
This is Carla.
And Shannon.
So back to essentially where we were, which we were talking about tax evasion elimination and the tax havens and things like that. There's one point actually I wanted to make just before we went off that and onto a more general talk about the way capitalism is sort of meant to work. And this is to do with the Dyson move to Singapore, because obviously there's an enormous amount of disruption that's going on with Brexit, obviously, and no one knows what's happening in the economy, and what's going to happen in Britain and everything else, whether they're going to have a deal or they're not going to have a deal, whatever it is. And then Dyson, which is a big employer in the UK, basically said, "This is crazy, I'm just going to leave." And then he moved his whole company to Singapore.
Really?
So
I know nothing about this.
he's headquartered, so Dyson, he's something Dyson, I can't remember his first name, but Dyson is now based in Singapore.
Uh-huh.
But this is not so much a critique of Brexit so much as it's more basically just pointing out that this is what companies do when things aren't good in a country anymore.
Yeah.
So basically, this is sort of the problem that countries have in terms of having to undersell each other and make tax rates as low as possible, and everything else that they do is they're trying to make their country appetizing to companies, because companies can just uproot and move to any one of the other options whenever they like. Kind of, it's expensive, but it's not impossible, and it's certainly feasible if you want to do it. So the thing is, that's the problem that countries have in terms of how to undercut things. So, like, it's not an ideal situation where if you say you want to implement these rules and these laws and these things, but that makes you more expensive, a company overseas is probably not going to move to yours. They might move to another one, but a company that's grown up in your country might be used to it and might stay.
Yeah.
But a company that's used to lax rules isn't going to move to one with lots of rules. Like, it's just not going to be done because it's going to be expensive, it's going to be difficult. They'll pick the easiest option.
Yeah.
The Occam's razor thing, the simplicity. So the thing is, and it's something that we have to be aware of with the way the system works at the moment and how it undercuts our efforts to basically make things better.
Yeah.
Because as much as competition is good economically commercially, competition is not always good when you're talking about trying to set up good standards of living, especially when they cost money.
It's this holding profit as the only thing that you're allowed to care about, I think, is part of it. Like, you get into, when you're dealing with a lot of money, the feeling is almost like, I'd like to do the right thing, but this other thing makes more money. I don't have a choice. I have to do that.
Yeah.
Because that you have to answer to your shareholders and that kind of thing. And it's like, you don't actually have to. Like, you could just do the right thing.
Well, it's the problem that working in a company, the shareholders and the institution and everything is just about shareholder value.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. It's like, the thing is, they're going to promote the people that care about it. They're going to pick the people that care about it. The people that don't care about it don't care enough to do well at their jobs and will probably quit.
Yeah.
Or they'll just stay at the bottom somewhere. The people that really, really make it a mission will get to the top.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, so organizations reward that behavior because that's what they're based on.
It's a systemic problem. And it's that, power corrupts thing too. Like,
Yeah.
you can get in with the best of intentions, but as you said, it gets weeded out by the time.
I think in a lot of it, I think it's distance.
Yeah.
I think you have shareholders and you have rich, like, CEOs and whatever it is. There's a distance between them and regular people. Like, the thing is, like, they live their day-to-day lives seeing poor people, I guess you call them, as more of like a theoretical entity. It's kind of like it's like a bunch of stereotypes. Like I said, it's like they're this and this and they want this and they want this and kind of thing. I understand. All the people I know are my group kind of thing, and it's like...
And it's one of those things that, like, on a small scale, if you work at a cafe and your cafe needs another barista and your friend wants a job as a barista, you'd be like, oh, sweet, come work at my cafe.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine in, like, I think most people's ethics would say that's okay.
Yeah.
But then if you're a politician awarding a $30 million contract to the company that your friend owns, suddenly that's not okay anymore, even though it feels, when you're in the moment, that feels like the right thing to do the right thing by your friend.
Yeah.
But it's not the right thing in the greater society. So I think it is...
Yeah. Nepotism is a thing that's, like, scaled.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, obviously, like, a small, teeny little thing, like, look, it's fine. That's just friends looking out for friends.
Yeah.
But then, if your standard of prosperous and poor is 50 million or 10 million, you're starting to think in terms of organizations. And like you say, you're starting to award your buddies contracts for massive operations or whatever it is. And it's not good. It gets away from you really quickly. So yeah, no, I just wanted to make that point about, the distance. But okay, so...
And just quickly, just because you forgot his name and I don't want him to come after us after this episode, please, it's Sir James Dyson.
Sir James.
Yes. Because he's a massive employer in the UK, because obviously it's Dyson, and they were manufacturing there for a long time, but then he's slowly moved things overseas.
Right.
But again, the whole slow move overseas is the same thing. Yeah. It's this slow thing of moving things away from a country that costs more money to somewhere where he doesn't have to pay as much money to maintain the manufacturing and everything else. And so that's the constant problem that you have in all countries, and that's a big part of why I think now, especially, there's this constant push from right wing and like we have the liberals here, the Republicans in America, to sort of like push away this idea of paying for education, paying for healthcare, paying for everything, because it makes the country more expensive. Yeah. And the thing is, the more and more they have to take from, and their logic, and I understand what their logic is basically, the more and more we have to take from these companies, the less and less they're going to want to be here. Yeah. And the less and less investment we're going to attract. So the less we take from them, the more companies will show up, the more we'll employ people, the more we can pay for. But obviously, the downside of that is the fact that then you're basically handing all the power for these things over to companies that have no obligation to do anything. Yeah. So the thing is, if something's profitable for them and it helps them, then they'll do it. But they're not going to pay for, you see the massive problem with entry-level jobs now. That no one offers to train anyone anymore. No. Because the thing is, they all want someone else to do that, and then they'll just pick up the trained people. Yeah. And training has become a massive issue because of that. And where it used to be in the 50s and 60s that places would just take you on and train you to do anything. Yeah. Almost anything. Whereas now the number of entry-level jobs is, I think I read it again, I think it's in the book I'm reading now. I need to look it up again. The number of entry-level jobs available per entry-level job seeker is 1 to 5 or something. Yeah. So there's one job available for every 5 entry-level people. And so it's, without training systems and things like that, it's not working well. And without healthcare and everything else, obviously no one has any money, and it's a very big problem. Capitalism. So capitalism it's basically meant to work in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. It does there is models and things that account for having international economics, but predominantly it works really well if you're dealing with one country. If you're doing one country that doesn't really do anything overseas, doesn't really have anything to deal with and compete with, because what it's meant to do is all the money that goes into the companies and goes to people and everything else, they will then go and spend on other things. They'll spend it on services and people and shops and things, and it'll go to, even if it goes to a rich person, he'll go and spend it on sports cars and golf club memberships and whatever it is.
That's what I'd do.
Exactly. That's what I do every 5 days. Golf club memberships.
Yeah. $70,000 a year. Make my breakfast.
Buy 6. No, it's just that's the idea, is effectively that money is meant to keep flying back into the economy, and as it keeps going and going and going, people keep spending more and more and more, and then it creates jobs, it creates industry, and then when you need something, you need people to do it, so you train people yourself if they're not there available, whatever it is. But now what we have is international economics, where there's no one here in my country, but there's 10,000 people willing to do this in India. Yeah. So I will just move everything to India instead. And then the way that capitalism is kind of meant to work doesn't really account for that. It doesn't really adjust to it very well. And instead, the money that comes in and back to the company that it's meant to make in profit from doing that is meant to then be spent on more investment. But the thing is, then it gets saved instead, or it gets put overseas into something else that they want, and it just leaves the country. Capitalism actually isn't a bad idea as long as it sits in one little loop and it just flows around. You need to control it. Yeah. Capitalism is probably the most powerful economic system that's ever been devised.
Yeah, well, that's what I've always read, that it's extremely good at taking a developing nation into becoming more
Yeah.
developed. But it's just the problem is it has all these positive feedback loops. So it's you need to have free education and healthcare and that kind of thing to level the playing field.
Yeah.
You basically need to make sure that whenever something that is profitable, so all the companies are doing it, isn't overwriting what is also right.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's like, as long as capitalism is paying for education and paying for employment and paying for all these things and it's working the way it's intended, then it's great. But its main priority is to make profit. And a lot of the time, those two things can align. But the thing is, it doesn't always.
Yeah.
And whenever it doesn't align, the state needs to be there to compensate for the thing that it's missing.
Yeah.
Or it needs to change something to make sure that that thing is not being missed.
Yeah, there needs to be some power that's representative of the general population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be the idea for a global society, is obviously you have one economy where businesses are able to sell everywhere. Everyone's selling on the same terms.
Yeah.
If you're making the best thing, you're making the best thing. No one's going to make it cheaper. No one's going to make it anything because of, like, unfair rules.
Yeah.
It's going to be, if your product is the best product, it's going to cost you the same amount to make it anywhere.
Yeah.
So you may as well just make it where you are, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So anyone can do whatever they want and sell it in an even market. And that is, like, perfection for capitalism, because again, you've got a closed system where it's able to work, but you'd need to have state support to cover when it fails, because it's gonna fail.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna screw things up. It's gonna have holes where it doesn't do things. Like, one of the biggest things about capitalism is that, as compared to command economies, so I was reading about the collapse of the Soviet Union, and one of the biggest problems of the Soviet Union is, as much as they were able to use state funding and state support to do really enormous and fantastic things, like developing that country from a peasant society to, like I said, a spacefaring race. Like, that is an enormous change, but the problem is it's because they kind of reprioritize a lot of things into very specific locations.
Yeah.
It wasn't efficient. But what they ended up with, was the problem with command economies, and this is what they realized over time.
So can you just define command economy?
A command economy is basically you don't have a market, and the government, it just has a massive statistics bureau or something that basically just dictates what the resources are going to go and what they're all going to go towards. Which means you can plan everything, but it means your planners have to get everything right.
Yeah.
The problem that they had is that you might plan something 5 years ahead, but then things might not pan out the way you thought they would, and changing the plan is really hard. And so you're constantly inefficiently sending things to different places. There was also the problem that the black market got really big and none of the numbers were right because everyone was lying. But the problem is, the biggest problem was the command economy problem, where they just couldn't adapt to the market changes whenever they occurred, like a shortage of something.
The internet would help with that?
The internet could help, but the problem is that the government still set rules for all these things.
Yeah.
So the problem is that what capitalist economies do instead is that the instant there is value to be made from anything, there's someone there doing something with it.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants to make money. So the thing is, it uses that self-interest and that, like, complicated nature of humans doing their own thing and the entrepreneurial thing to basically make sure that everything is covered all the time. It's like any insane thing you think up, you can probably find it on the internet. You know, like, you think, I've always wanted to have a holder for this that would do this and play music or something, and it's probably there already.
Yeah.
Because someone else has had the idea and made it already. Like, that's the purpose, that it covers everything immediately. And, like, if oil prices change, all of a sudden the way BP runs itself and everything else runs itself changes in an instant because they can't afford to lose money.
Yeah.
So they will change the pricing, they will change everything really quickly.
Yeah.
Because they want to react as a market entity. Whereas in a command economy, it's not such an issue. You're sort of just dealing with resources. So
it's bottom up versus top down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when things happen, there's a very quick reaction or companies die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, that's the benefit of capitalism. It's very agile.
Yeah.
But the problem is that its main priority is making as much money as possible,
Yeah.
which doesn't always align with making good lives for everyone.
Again, sometimes, not always.
Yes. It's the best thing we've figured out, but the thing is, it has these big drawbacks that we need to cover, and so we can't get in love with it.
Yeah.
It's like the
Which
thing
I think the Cold War kind of did to the American culture.
No,
and as you say,
did.
the American culture is the world culture now.
Yeah.
They're just so scared of communism.
Yeah. Oh, they're scared of anything state run. Like,
Yeah.
especially in the South, like, it's like state run is bad. No, absolutely not. The problem is then you end up with the problems that capitalism has, which is where everything is absurdly expensive and
Well, I guess it's
like medicine.
things that you need. Yeah, like if things that are wants rather than needs, capitalism works really well, and it's, as you said, it's agile and people have free choice.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's something you need, like
Yeah.
medicine, they can just completely
Especially,
you up,
especially
like-
if you have the monopoly
and
on it,
things
because
like
I mean
food.
that's like the diamond market with
Yeah.
the way De Beers basically just owns everything,
Yeah.
and then whenever a new source appears, they take control of it immediately.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much they have to pay for it, whatever it is, they take control of it because as long as they control all of them, they can control the pricing by basically releasing it at slow amounts. And it's the same principle for medicine. It's
Yeah.
basically, if you're a massive medical conglomerate and you have a patent of a medicine, and then some company devises a slightly better way to treat it or something, you will throw tons of money at it to buy it. And that guy who's just invented that thing, who maybe has a team of 20 people or something, is like, oh, I've got this thing. And then someone's come along and offered you $120 million to buy your solution.
Really
It's
hard
like,
to say no.
I'm probably going to say yes. Because if I say
Especially
no,
because-
he'll be back next week with $500 million, and then I'm definitely going to say yes.
Yeah, and because you.
But also, yes, now.
And because you don't know how to run a business. If you're a
Exactly.
scientist developing these things, it's a whole different ballgame. So
Yeah.
it would be, I mean, some people definitely do it, but in general, it would be ridiculous to try to market it yourself.
Yeah, and then as soon as they know you're not on their side, they will spend just as much money to destroy you.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's like you end up with certain things that don't play well with the way companies want to act. Because all companies, their perfect state is a monopoly where everyone has to buy their product and no one else can sell it.
Yeah.
It's like that is where they're all trying to get to, but the government is meant to stop them from getting to that point.
Yeah.
Like if it looks like they're going to, but medicine in the UK has become, in the US has become such a messy, burning sort of topic that like the government doesn't have the power to intervene because everyone's like, no, stay away from it. I don't care if my medicine costs $800 and it keeps me alive every 5 days. But the thing is, their terrorism.
It's so hard. And if you look at the numbers, like, it's just so inefficient, their process, too.
Yeah.
It's not like, even if you're looking at it from a really cold-hearted, profit-driven point of view,
Yeah.
it's still a shitty system.
Yeah. It's great for the people making the medicine,
Yeah.
and it's bad for
But
everyone else.
the government spends more on healthcare than most governments do, and they have a worse system for it.
Because they have all these checks and balances that kind of protect the medical companies from having to really diminish their profits at all. So the government basically has to pay the extortionate prices when they're subsidizing it. So it's like, yeah, we'll buy your medicine for you. It costs $1,000 every single time you get it instead of something reasonable, but we have to pay for it because it's covered by Medicaid or whatever it is. So yeah, they have a bad way of setting it up, but that essentially that's capitalism. It's I've always compared it to a rocket. Like the thing is, it's like this missile, this rocket that will take you to the moon when nothing else will. Like it's incredibly powerful, but if you don't put a control system in it, it's just going to crash into the city and blow everything up instead. Like you have to keep it under the reins, otherwise it destroys you instead of helping you. Anyway, so that it's just the point I was trying to make with that whole thing is that capitalism functions and is designed to function by its original models as a closed system where it like works in a loop kind of thing. But even then, it wasn't devised to fix everything. And if anyone ever thought it was going to solve everything, obviously they didn't know robots and shit were coming. So well, actually that's the thing. As long as you had no conception that automation would ever exist, maybe it all made sense because you would always need people to do all the jobs.
Yeah.
So automation kind of and technological growth kind of screws it up a bit. So yeah, I mean that's probably part of it. Alright, so the next point that I wanted to make was about the end to war, because effectively we don't suffer the inefficiencies because it's so inefficient. The armies that we have and like spy agencies, national governments, trade agencies,
Spying would be the big one.
constant feuding and undercutting each other. I mean, how much energy do you think in a day a national government devotes to thinking about what other governments are doing?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like look at the newspapers and things. Like you think of like the security agencies, the military, just like the federal, like all of the federal government arms that handle the economy and trade and everything else. How much time do you think they're like just sitting there just trying to put in contingencies just in case this country does this, or this country does this, or this happens because of something we can't control, or whatever it is.
Yeah, so looking at your notes for that, I was thinking, you're always going to have like civil unrest and people wanting to secede and that kind of thing. But I hadn't thought of the fact that it's really going to be the informational agencies that we're the saving.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're going to have unrest with people. It's the difference of having like my army next to your army, my spies and yours, my things and yours, these games that everyone's constantly trying to outguess each other and plan around and set aside reserves and supports, invest massively in a submarine fleet that sounds like it's going to be outdated by the time it comes out of the dock. Like, it's just all these things we're investing money into basically in an attempt to stay ahead of each other and undercut each other, and like there might like if things happen like what they'll do is they'll like buy out resources. Like China is trying to massively invest in all the resource areas in Africa where they make smartphone components. Like they get the cobalt, I think it is, for smartphone components. And so the thing is, I mean, that helps them, but the thing is, how much money are they spending on doing that? Yeah. And it's almost certainly in an effort to basically make sure that no one will undercut them as the main supplier of smart goods and electronics. Yeah. Like, a massive amount of energy is devoted to basically just staying ahead of everyone else.
And then it feeds back on what you were saying last episode in part 1 or episode 3, that if you can then refunnel that into development and...
Yeah, I mean, look at all the money and time and people they employ to screw each other over, basically, or just to make sure you're not going to be the inferior partner. Yeah. Because so much goes wrong now internationally when you're the inferior partner and you don't have the ability to make demands on someone else. It's
you need to keep up the arms race.
Exactly, and it's like it's America constantly was developing nations and offering them loans on extortionate terms because it keeps them in a strong position. Yeah. The thing is, like, the UN, which we have to have an episode on at some point. The UN. The thing is, with the UN, like, they basically are the UN. Like, they call it the UN, but it's basically America and other people. Like, it's
sounds like a good animation right there.
It's like, if anyone does anything, they can use the UN to punish them because they're on the Security Council. They can do whatever they want with it. That's the thing. It's because they're in a position of power and they're nervous about ever losing that. And obviously China is a threat to it, and that's why they're terrified of China and Russia and places like that. Not so much Russia, more China.
Russians are alright.
So the Russians are more just a destabilizing figure at the moment.
Yeah, they're not really a major economic threat or anything. They're more just like, what are they going to do next kind of thing.
Not directly, but they certainly contributed.
Oh yeah, no, I mean competing, as in like a competition economy that might outseat America. Absolutely not Russia, but maybe China.
But, Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide last night.
I read about that. Yeah,
and there's heaps and heaps of Russian bots connecting it to Clinton.
Really?
Clinton killed him. Just to draw attention away from the fact that Trump probably spent more time with him than Clinton did.
There is
really interesting.
They're like, it's ridiculous. It's sort of like the fake news stuff. Did you read about the other one where they were making up the story, and this actually turned into something? They were making up the story that the Democrats and Clinton were running a pedophile ring out of a restaurant
in a pizza joint.
out of a pizza joint in America. It's like,
that was weird.
That seems like, you read it and it's like, that just seems like telegraph insanity. Like, that is ridiculous. And then someone went in and started shooting people. Yeah. Like, the guy actually rocked up who believed it and started shooting people. And it's like, that is insane. That is ridiculous. Like, the fake news thing is like, I mean, Russia spends quite a bit of money trying to just mess things up because they're trying to break up the kind of monopoly of power. But Oh no, that was ridiculous. There's the fake news. Fake news, I feel like needs to be its own episode actually, because there's so much of it.
I can contribute to some fake news.
Yeah.
we'll just have some fake news in our fake news episode.
That would be really funny actually. I say.
Oh yeah, we should all bring like.
No.
Yeah.
We all need to. We should all just make 3, right? And then one of them is a fake news story, and 2 of them are real.
Ooh, I like that.
And then you have to guess which is fake news.
The competition between what is real fake news and what is fake news.
That actually sounds like a really good idea. We should definitely do that. But
Anyway, diversion over.
anyway, but like, yeah, so like, it's more just the amount of energy that gets expended on a daily. Like I was saying, temporal exhaustion. And I was saying about the first one. We're so exhausted with the things we have to deal with day to day that we don't have the energy to plan for the future.
Yeah.
And I mean, how much energy is spent making sure for the next few years we're not going to get destroyed by Chinese economy or I don't know, the European Union changes or the next presidential election, whatever it is. Like, by having these militaries just sitting there spending all their time and effort trying to outdo each other rather than, I mean, how much more efficient would it be if suddenly you took the Chinese and American militaries and just gave them all a mission to develop the third world?
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine the amount of resources that would suddenly throw at the problem kind of thing, instead of them just sitting there like really nervously with their guns on their islands and flying planes into each other's airspace and pissing each other off. Like, these massive organizations that have enormous budgets doing virtually nothing useful.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could throw all that at something and give them a common cause so that they're not looking each other over their shoulders anymore, they're just doing something. Like, it's that kind of... It's just internationally having those different organizations undercutting each other and shooting each other in the foot kind of thing. Like, what, like... I should really find some examples of this before I talk about it, but I didn't actually note it down to do that. But I know there's examples throughout history where countries have basically done something that is worse for themselves in an effort to make sure that their competition ends up even worse.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's like, here's this really good thing that we could share, but I'm pretty sure they're going to end up with it or something, and they'll destroy it. Like, even though it cops them, it hurts them more, because it's just about being relatively better. Actually, it's a bit of a divergence, but it reminds me of something from economics. They did this survey where they basically said, okay, if you could have $100 and everyone else you knew got nothing, would you take it? And they say, absolutely, I'll take $100. They say, now, if I could give you $1 million, but everyone you ever hated got $10 million, would you take the $1 million? And a lot of people say no.
That blows my mind.
Like
I
right?
would so take it.
Like,
I don't get that.
Like, the majority of people said they wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
I need to look it up to know the name of the study, but I remember being told about it in economics. But yeah, no, it's this thing of relative benefit. It's we just need to be better than everyone else. Even if things suck, as long as it sucks more for everyone else, we feel like we've done the right things. And it's just, relative benefit. I need to look it up, and I'll mention it again when I can actually pull it up and show people what it was. So the next one is the ability to plan around the development of automation and AI without economic competition. So as we said in the last one, we're not going to do this justice. It's just, I wanted to touch on it.
Let's touch on it and we can discuss it in more depth.
I think it's its own topic already anyway, I've written down. But the thing is, the idea, like we were saying, the perfect country economically is just a country where you can make everything for 0.1 cents and it's all done automated. Like, as automation gets more and more advanced and AI gets more advanced, you're replacing more and more jobs with it. So I think when they introduced the mini mill in the steel industry in America, they lost something like 50,000 people from the steel industry. Oh no, it was hundreds, but I'll find the number again.
They took our jobs.
But basically, that was exactly what it was. No, but the automation of putting these mini mills in just destroyed. Like, the productivity of the steel industry remained exactly the same, but the employment went down enormously. And so they saved a lot of money doing it through mini mills instead. So it's the same thing. It's basically nationalist economies dealing on an international scale cannot deal with that problem. Like, they cannot deal with the fact that some country is going to be able to do things with robots that was never planned for by the people who created capitalism, and completely forego human employment. That should be terrifying, because the thing is, like, there's no rule to say it should. Right now, if someone had the capability to do it, they could do it. No rule to stop them, and a massive amount of the national economies would be moved there, to be made there and done there, and there's nothing to stop it.
Yeah, and it touches back on what I was saying in episode 3, I think, that if everyone would just agree to let the robots do it and just to not have that competition and to not have that competitive drive and say, look, we don't have to work. The robots can do everything.
Yeah.
We can just do art and experiences.
Yeah.
But I think it's not going to happen that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. The thing is that the point that I try to make with this is that if we have this problem coming up, it's going to be like global warming, where we don't agree on anything and everything goes to shit and nothing changes.
Yeah.
Whereas if we have an actual international government of some kind, we can do something about it. Like, we can control how much employment is done by robots. We can change how much it comes in and out. A national government of like Singapore or something that relies on international trade might just kick it in 100%.
Yeah.
Might just say, why not? We'll just do 100% of this. Like a company, you can imagine like Romania or something that's struggling for a competitive edge. And then they could just say, we'll leave the EU and we'll go all robots.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, why not? You know, why not go all robots? Uzbekistan or something. They could just make themselves the richest country on the planet overnight because they can just go full robots and everyone can just build their things there.
But I mean, I don't think there are currently any laws against...
No, there's not, but there is not laws against it at all. And the thing is, but they don't have sufficient automation technology to really do it properly yet. But it's getting there.
Be those poorer nations that do it.
Well, what they do is they'd sell themselves out to a private entity that would then fill the country with robots, and then they'd own some portion of the country's economy or something. But the thing is, the person there that has nothing else to sell is like, well, this is better than it was before.
Yeah.
So I will sell my country to the world's preeminent robot manufacturer and basically let them do whatever they want here. And then you'd have this weird mix of like a private corporate national country that just makes all its money from robot manufacture. But yeah, there's nothing to stop it, and it could happen tomorrow if someone had the technology for it. But a international government could deal with it by at least putting restrictions in place, or by, like you said, maybe even embracing it and then putting them in as the workforce. But it's something that needs to be done uniformly.
Yeah.
Because as long as international economic competition's in place, it's like there's no positive outcome.
Yeah.
For unless somehow there is enough jobs to sustain robot manufacture, but like usually when you do automate from all other automation examples, usually they don't really get moved that way. It's like and that's why the Trump country is now Trump country, because nothing replaced it.
Yeah, I think in 50 years the only jobs will be service and art and science, which I would place under art.
Yeah. No. It's like
you don't need any manual labour. You barely need any kind of middle management.
Yeah. No, that's like all the phone AI stuff now is actually replacing service workers and things as well.
Yeah, I think it'd just be like minor detail, like fabrication sort of stuff that, you know, where you can't actually get a robot into a certain spot that you like, got some old school job, someone goes in there and does all that.
But even then, eventually they'll invent micro robots that'll do that. Like, it's like, I think technically the problem is that a robot can do anything. Like, you get it far enough down the level of advancement in AI, there's nothing that they can't do better. Yeah. It's more just like we'd have to like create a... But then, like you said,
do you think art even?
It's more... I think, honestly, I don't see the reason why, inevitably, if you created something that was able to learn, and, like an artificial intelligence, after a sufficient amount of time, could create art with the same amount of meaning and whatever as a human being.
Fascinating.
It would be.
I would think there'd still be two streams. I think that there would be AI
I'm talking like really far down the track, where it's basically an artificial life form.
I feel like it would have to create its own level of singularity where it is able to either have its own or understand human emotions across the board
Yeah,
in order to
exactly.
be able to see something, run it through all emotional possibilities,
The
have
point,
an angle on it, and then produce from there.
Yeah.
the point at which it replaces something like art is like massively further away
Yeah.
than where it replaces just doing a job.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's going to come
absolutely.
way.
Mm.
And the thing is, that part is like the part that's the problem,
Yeah.
is the replacing
Oh,
the
yeah.
jobs, and that's the one that's close. It's like that they're going to be able to replace all telephone workers, all everything, because it can do the voices, it knows what you're saying, it does everything. But
What's your thought on universal basic income?
I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I actually read a book by Rutger Bregman, who was one of the big proponents of it, called Utopia for Realists. It's actually really good. It makes the case for UBI really well, but like I'm in favour of it because
Oh, me too.
like the thing is, it's a great protection for everyone, and it's sort of like
Yeah.
it's basically it's using the market to its best effect. Like we were saying, individuals know exactly what they need.
Yeah.
Individuals know what they need to do, kind of thing. The thing is, like, there might be a tiny percentage of people that have no self-control and are just going to spend it on substance abuse or something. But the thing is, like, that's a tiny fragment.
Yeah.
And even then, those
so
people,
what?
if they have the money there and it's just coming to them, they're probably. I think I need to look up studies on this, but I honestly think that they more often than not eventually use it to do something better with themselves.
Yeah.
Especially when they're not struggling for homes and things like that.
Yeah, and also like if you are just pouring it all into substance abuse, so what? Like as long as you're not like if having the UBI, I mean, I suppose with substance abuse it tends to be a ravenous beast that is never satisfied and you still will steal from people and do crime to get more of it.
But then you're not as desperate for it, is it?
Yeah, and if you're not desperate and you're not doing crime, it's bad for you, and I'm a bit sad, but it doesn't hurt anyone else if you're sitting in the corner on heroin all day.
But even then, I hardly see, like, with technology going the way it's going and security will only go up in nature, it's going to be harder for people to commit these crimes, to commit these robberies in order to do that.
Yeah,
the separation between it, especially if they're just, mindlessly self-indulging in their own in their own addictions.
I think a lot of people see like the American opioid crisis and stuff, and they relate it to like, they'll just buy more heroin or whatever it is. But I think the opioid crisis is in massive part driven by the fact that no one has any money and people are desperate and depressed and there's nothing anywhere. I think injecting money into and like having it so there's no checks is great, because so much government resources is wasted on checking people's incomes and putting through processes.
No, it needs to be given to everybody. Like Bill Gates should still receive it.
And the great thing is that honestly,
give it back.
Well,
the thing
he'd
is,
be paying way more than that in tax. But it needs to be flat. Everyone gets the same.
But companies wouldn't need to pay them that much as much money, because they could discount the UBI from their salaries.
Yeah.
So basically, as long as it's still giving the same sort of purchasing power, because you're going to get a bit of inflation based on the fact that everyone has money, so you'll have to work it out. But the thing is, like, having that, it's a great solution.
And you could also change the education system around that as well, so it's about how to actually survive to live off that UBI, so we could get back into, planting your own foods and, surviving.
I think people could focus so much more on just making themselves happy and helping people around them if they weren't desperate for everything all the time. It's just, I think you'd end up with a much better society.
And even if you did something like Singapore, you started like building high rises and putting people, in them that way and incentivizing, removing the amount of space that we're actually spreading out and living in. Yeah. Then we can have more space where we can actually use this rather than...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it'll help the property inflation as well.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of things that you could do, and I think being in countries and being paranoid about competition means that we're not really free to really think about them in the same way.
Yeah.
Because we're so dominated by the concerns du jour, like the thing that's in front of you at the time, the problem that you have right now, whatever it is. You can't engage in these ideas as much because, countries might think you're being inefficient with money or whatever. Like companies, might think you're being inefficient with money or whatever, and like, that sounds weird, I'm going to stay away from you, whatever it is. Like, as long as you're just trying to market to wealthy people and companies, like, it really screws with your ability to function as a state.
Yeah.
So, yes. That, like, protection against robots, UBI introduction, all those kinds of things, I'd love for an international system to be able to cope with them and implement solutions to them. So, the next one was basically the ability to fund global healthcare and development, like general development, because a lot of people don't realize this, but in countries like America, you have states like California or Nevada or whatever it is that are paying an enormous amount of money into the federal government, and way more than they're receiving back from the government. Like, there's this general narrative in America that these like states like California are like sucking money from the rest of the country that's working hard or whatever it is, but it's the total opposite.
Right.
And this is sort of like, it's almost like foreign aid, but in a domestic level, and it's sort of the way that
Could be more efficient than you think.
Yeah, and it's basically the same way that you would fund the development of the world. Like, the same way that states like Nevada and California hold up poorer states like, I think I've written them down here, I think it's New Jersey. No, New Jersey's one of the really good ones. Sorry, like New Mexico and Mississippi. They receive about $2.02 for every dollar they've contributed to the federal tax.
Right.
So basically, they get back $2 for every dollar they put back in. So they're basically being funded by states like New Jersey and Nevada, which put about 63 cents for every dollar they put in. So the really rich states are paying to support the poorer states in the US already. But no one complains about that.
It's
like,
not
it happens
that you hear
every
much.
single year. The rich states are paying to support the poorer states.
Yeah.
But the poorer states are always complaining about foreign aid and stuff. But it's like, can you imagine what would happen to South Carolina or Mississippi if suddenly California and New Jersey stopped funding what is there through federal programs? Like, it's crazy. The lack of knowledge around this, but that's how it would effectively work on a global level. You basically are using the more wealthy parts of the world to pay for the poorer parts. And obviously, I remember you mentioning this. The problem is that people start to think, you're equalizing 7 billion people.
Yeah.
How much? What does that sit
What do
at?
I lose?
So, all right. So I actually did this. I actually worked this out.
Oh.
It would work globally in the same way. So as an idea, the global GDP per capita, the global GDP is per capita is $15,000 US per capita, is about the same as the GDP per capita of Chile or Argentina.
Okay.
So everyone in the world would be basically the same level as an average person in Chile or Argentina. So it's not amazing, but it's not terrible. But you have to think of that as like, that's the worst case scenario, because that is all the inefficiencies, all the tax evasion, all the things that we have wrong with the way the world works at the moment, equalized to everyone in the entire planet. And then from that point, you say, okay, we start to fix the tax code, we start to fix the problems of tax evasion, we start to bring things in together more so that people can sell everywhere they are. The average income can go up.
Yeah.
When the average income goes up, people buy more. When people buy more, the economy goes up as well. It's like the reason all those... so when Henry Ford made the Ford plan, he said, I pay my workers more than the average wage because I want them to be able to buy my cars. Like, that was his rationale. And so... it's the same thing on a global level, that if you're able to implement these things, you go from everyone in the world is Chile or Argentina to maybe a few more steps up to everyone is getting closer to a more developed country. Cause,
Finland or something.
Whatever.
Really
That's the thing. I think people think everything would be completely terrible, but it's even the bottom is not that bad.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a fear though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, the thing is, people just still don't want to lose what they have. And it's like, and that's the thing is, like, I don't advocate us flicking the switch and going from this to that overnight. It's like, it's something you do in tiers and slowly, you do it over an enormous amount of time. You just have to choose that that's the thing that you want to get to or whatever it is. And you have to commit to it. But yeah, it's just about seeing that even the worst case scenario, even the worst case right now, split it up, everyone gets equal money, you're about Chile or Argentina, which isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to dispel that idea, I guess. Like,
yeah, it's an interesting factoid to have.
Yeah, no, it's a very pervasive terror that unification would mean everyone would be like, you know, the mountain people of, you know, Kyrgyzstan or something. And that things wouldn't develop from there. But they would, and that's the thing, is like...
Last point?
Yes, last point. So the final one was that basically the ability to expand as a species. So the thing is, it's a question of capacity. So we have the problem at the moment where a big project for a country is not the same thing as a big country for the planet. A big project for the planet.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a state, for instance, within America, as an example, a major project would be building a big dam or something that is going to bring a lot of hydroelectricity to some other section of the state. That's a big project for a state. A country might embark on some really big project, like the thing with the Chinese building those artificial islands for military purposes, but they're building artificial islands. Like it's an example. You know, like the ISS is a project between countries that aren't particularly well organized, but they're managing to get that done. It's about looking at the next level of that. So you take, instead of these individual economies that are constantly afraid of each other, but they're trying to put some money aside to invest in a project, you think of that on a global scale where no one's afraid of each other anymore and worrying about getting undercut by each other, and then them all investing together in some kind of project. I mean, what could you do in that instance, you know?
Climate change is the obvious, is the obvious one, because it's one of the arguments that I hear a lot against Australia doing anything about it, is that we put in 2.3 or 2.8% of global carbon, and so people are saying, like, even if we're perfect, we're making such a small difference, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you had more unified collective.
No, absolutely. No, and that's part of the thing, like what I was saying about with China being classed as developing. They don't need to, they're not held culpable for as much because of their status.
Yeah, right.
Even though they're a major contributor. Obviously, they're probably the biggest contributor now. The thing is, it's hard to really argue with, like, people saying that when there's no guarantee that someone else is going to do it. I find human beings as a culture don't mind sacrifice as long as they know that it's for a purpose and everyone else is doing it. Yeah. They don't want to be the one sacrificing if someone else isn't. Because then it's just like, why am I doing this? When you don't have to. That sense of injustice is very strong, and I totally understand it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. People don't mind cutting into businesses and doing the right thing, whatever it is, as long as there was a ironclad guarantee that everyone else is going to do as well. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what this would solve. Like, I think them having to communicate and say, I'm going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and someone like, I don't know if I'm going to do it, and someone else is like, I don't know, is global warming real? It's like, it muddies the water enormously, and no one has any guarantees anymore that everyone else is going to play by the same rules. So you need to have uniform rules to deal with uniform problems, because it is a uniform problem that everyone's copying. Yeah. Some more than others.
But I guess also it's not just problem solving like climate change. There's all kinds of positive things that...
No, absolutely. No, but I mean, it gives you the ability to deal with problems, I guess is the better way to say it. And the thing is, moreover, it's about thinking about, like the great example I have is solar energy. Yeah. So the thing is, like, the ability at the moment for us to make solar farms and things like that, we lose depending on the cloud level, and like obviously you can't do it at night, but like depending on the cloud level, you lose about 40 to 90% of the solar energy as it comes through the atmosphere and the clouds before it gets to the actual solar farm. So the thing is, even on a really clear place, even in a really clear place, so like, you know, middle of the African desert and there's no clouds or anything, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
You're still losing about 30% of it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's still victim to weather effects. So the thing is, weather can come through and score it and damage things and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously, at a time when you need it, there might actually be clouds.
Yeah.
Like, you need big batteries to hold it, that kind of thing. Like, it's good, but it has flaws.
Yeah.
What I've heard proposed is things like building massive solar arrays in orbit.
Yeah.
So the thing is, instead, there's nothing that can affect it because there's no weather.
Yeah.
They can aim it at the sun all the time.
Yeah.
Like, it never isn't aimed at the sun. You have no inhibitor for scale because there's nothing. You just need to orbit it. The thing is, you can be enormous. There's no reason not to make it enormous, and it's just no country is going to build something like that, especially when they're not even sure it's safe. Because the thing is, someone might just shoot a missile. They might invest $5 billion in building something that could solve the energy crisis on Earth or whatever it is, and then someone else could just shoot a rocket at it, and then it's gone. Like, kind of thing. It's how do you can't keep it secure because it's in space. Like, you just don't have defenses for it. So like, not only scale but safety concerns and everything else. We don't want to build anything big and fragile because there's too many ways to destroy it. And even then, there's the things around 0-day viruses, which is I read a book about them, which is all about these viruses that are being developed by like countries like America and others. Like Stuxnet. Did you ever hear of Stuxnet? Stuxnet was one where a little bit of it broke free into like a computer system. But the idea of these viruses is that they are released in packets into other countries' economies, and then what they'll do is they'll work their way through the national security, electricity grids, and all those kind of things, and turn everything off in the whole country. And so a 0-day virus, the idea is it's ready to go all the time, and then the thing is, the second you're at war with that country, you flick the switch, and you've destroyed the entire country with the computer virus.
Wow.
Like, there's actually a lot of them. They're like, different countries have them, but no one wants to... It's like nuclear war. No one wants to start that.
Yeah.
Because everything is connected through computers.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so there's this cyber security concern all the time that sort of stuff is going to get flicked on. And then, it was Stuxnet, and it was like, it got loose into some company or something, and like, it just eradicated everything or something.
Oh my
like,
God.
I don't know, it was something somewhere... that like it worms its way in and it replicates itself and it finds the things that are meant to be that it thinks are useful, and it's like driven by an AI that is like self-perpetuating. So every time it cuts a piece off, that has its own AI that will then go looking for things on its own, kind of thing. Like, it's incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
But stuff like that. So like, that's what I was talking about before with armies and agencies armed at each other. They have everything in the imaginable at their disposal that they have aimed at each other, and no one wants to let their guard down or possibly concede because they could just completely ruin themselves. But like, with these major projects, security is always a concern. Like, because how easy is it to damage? How easy is it to use against us? How whatever. The thing is, did you hear about this time that there was a US drone and it was flying near Pakistan? Not in Pakistan, but near it, and apparently someone in Pakistan just hacked into it and landed it at their airbase because it convinced the drone that was an American airbase, and so it landed, and they just took it. And that's the thing. Like, that's the thing is like, and then they realized how vulnerable the security systems were within the drones to being affected by radio signals and things like that. And so it's the same thing with these global projects. Like, who wants to spend that much money when they're that concerned about security? And then, so... Because in theory, something like an orbital massive solar array, I mean, you could potentially build something that could solve all energy needs on Earth.
Yeah.
And they can transmit it by microwaves, apparently.
Okay, that was my next question.
Does that mean we can cook our food at the same time?
That's exactly what it is, Shannon.
Yes.
They come with like these prisms, so then they fuel all the microwaves.
Free energy and free cooked food.
It fires them from space, like the microwave foods.
So told your chicken up. And
it just misses slightly and kills you instantly.
Oh wait, no! There's a problem. There's a
like,
problem for tall people.
Exactly. But apparently, apparently that's how they would do that. They've already figured out how to do it. It's like, you could transmit power by microwaves, and then have receivers on Earth that would receive the energy from the microwaves that would then power things. So the thing is, that sort of stuff, like, it's just not going to get...
Theoretically possible.
It's enormous. It's an enormous project. Building gateway stations on the moon, like proper ones, where you could manufacture orbital infrastructure and put it into orbit or move it out to the solar system, whatever it is. Like, stuff like that is just not going to get done on a proper scale by a country. A country might do sorts of things like that, but it would be on a scale that wouldn't solve the world's problems. But yeah, it's about opening our minds at this point to everything that's possible. That everything that we could do if we were able to be in a unified society, in a unified government, and the projects that we could achieve and the things we could achieve together as a civilization, because I think we're realizing that humanity is a civilization. The more and more we talk to each other and the more we see of each other and see ourselves in the frame of being a planet, you know, like, cause like where there's something like 21, no, there's a sextillion stars, which is 1 with 21 zeros after it, and every single one is estimated to have at least one planet of some kind, even if it's just a barren piece of crap. It's like...
like Earth.
Yeah, there you go. But like...
I think the stat I've heard recently is 20% of stars have a planet in the habitable zone.
Yeah, no, I believe it, yeah. No, they're all meant to have at least something, even if it's just one gas giant that you can't live on or whatever it is. But yeah, like, there's meant to be a massive number that they've started, because they've started doing the exoplanet observation and stuff like that. Like, if you start to think of us in the frame of reference of the fact that we're so incredibly small, it's like, you have to see humanity for what it is. Like, humanity is this thing that's developed on this one nice little planet that's just in the right spot, and we've gotten pretty lucky so far because we haven't been killed by anything, and no asteroids, no gamma ray bursts, no anything have wiped us out. Whatever it is, we've gotten pretty lucky, but we need to see ourselves in this frame of reference, because the longer we stay completely invested to this little divisionist version of Earth, the longer we're also a danger of just getting destroyed by one of these cosmic events or whatever it is. And yeah, I guess that's my big thrust, is I'm trying to get humanity to see itself as a civilization. It's an early one, but as a civilization.
Cool.
And that probably actually ends the 4th episode, where it was meant to end, even though it's gone for a very long time. Yeah, hopefully we've sort of conveyed those topics, and I think a lot of them are going to have to do dedicated episodes on.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of meat in that one.
We have skimmed a lot of things and spent too much time talking about others. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much. I will tune out now and see you later.
The power is yours.
Thank you, Janet.